Y'all getting ready for your Christmas cards? Huh? Is this y'all? Is what you look like? What about the 14 takes before that? What's it look like? Yeah? That's what we've been talking about. Is as much as we love that and we want that and we want to post that on Instagram and everything. Yeah, you know. Listen. Madness broke out at your house about 10:15 this morning, didn't it? Right? Yes, it did. It does. It does mine. I came in here on two wheels this morning. Why? Man, because life doesn't always, right, look like that. Not everybody can grow a little scruff little beard like that. 6'2", 6'3", blue eyes. I mean, you know, it's not real. That's what we've been talking about as we kind of go through this, is what are those things that keep us from having that picture-perfect life that we want everybody to see. So today, we're going to look at what Jesus taught about, are you ready? You ready? Conflict resolution. Okay? Now listen, I know you have the perfect marriage and you don't fight and you don't do any of those things, right? That you don't argue with your kids, you don't do any of that, right? So maybe this won't be for you, but today we're going to look at what does the gospel say about conflict resolution. And listen, first let me talk about this. Let me just kind of lay out some key points that I want to make sure that you understand as we talk about marriage specifically. Marriage is permanent. Marriage is permanent. Okay? Now listen, I know, right? I know many of you, right? This is your second marriage and maybe more. So as we go through this, I don't want you to sit there and feel bad and all that. That's not my point, okay? Marriage is permanent. So the marriage you're in now, guess what? It's permanent. Permanent from this time on, right? But God teaches us that marriage is permanent. Marriage is an indissoluble covenant, dissolvable only by death. Okay. In marriage, you lock the door and you take divorce off the table. It's not even an option. Divorce should be as radical and as rare as amputation. Because that's basically, understand this, that as God created it, that's basically what it is. It's got profound implications for conflict resolution, that always kind of leads to it. Hey, if you take it off of the table as an option. Now listen, there are reasons behind it. Okay, there's reasons, right, that the Bible and Scripture, right, says that it is. All right, but in most cases, it should be off the table. Because you really figure out that a lot of your irreconcilable differences suddenly become reconcilable. I know that from experience, right? Necessity is the mother of invention, right? That if there's something is a necessity, if I know I've got to live with you for the next 40 years, 50 years, we're going to find a way. We're going to find a way to get along. All right, I don't want to live like that forever. Remember, Jesus' teaching on the permanence of marriage was so strong, right, that his disciples, his boys, were like, dang, Jesus, if that's the case, it's why even get married? Right? It's probably better to never get married. Right? And Jesus says, yeah, you're right. But if you're going to make it, guess what? You're going to need my help. You're going to need me. Right? In Matthew 19, Jesus taught that earthly marriage is not ultimate. Right? That marriage is not ultimate. Right? Matthew 19, in Jesus' teaching on marriage, he pronounces a blessing on eunuchs. who could never get married or have biological families. And so saying that they were still full recipients of God's blessing in his forever family. So in so doing, he refuted the idea popular then and maybe, let's be honest, popular today, right? That marriage and sex are essential to a happy life. It has implications for conflict too. Okay, I'll show you about today. And our conflict often and always, in most cases, arise from the fact that we look to marriage for things and that in reality, we need to be looking to God for. Right? That you're not going to find those things in your spouse. Right? Because one of the primary purposes, right, is to teach through marriage, is to teach us to love like God loves us. Which means loving sinful people. Men, we talked a little bit last week. You got to love your wife. And then he tells us what it should look like. Right? He says, men, love your wives like Christ loved the church, even to the point of giving your life for it, which is ultimately what Jesus was brought to earth to do. So, if we're supposed to love our wife, even to the point of death, it doesn't mean that through conflict we kill her and you're like, all right, now we got there, God. We there. That's not what it means. So we're going to look at that today. Marriage teaches us to love like God loves. And one thing we'll have in common in our families that we all experience, your family looks different than mine. Your marriage looks different than mine. Your children, right, your household is configured different than mine. However, I know that the one thing that we have in common is our families, we experience conflict. We experience confrontation with each other, regardless of that family structure. You're married, you're single again, you're part of an extended family, or you're in a group, small group, or you're in this church, right? This local body. There's going to be conflict. You experience conflict on the regular. But what makes it even more complicated than that oftentimes is that we all have different styles of conflict. The way that you manage your conflict is different than mine. Some of you are a peacemaker. You're a peacemaker. Which means you most want in your relationship is what? Harmony. You want harmony in your relationship. So whatever happens, you always try to move the needle back to de-escalate, right? To give harmony to that relationship. Your attitude is basically, hey, if you're happy, I'm happy. Happy wife. Seems great, except when it causes you to smooth over some issues that really ought to be dealt with. Sometimes folks are unwilling to do the hard work necessary as a peacemaker. Probably a better name for them is a peace faker, to be honest. Others of you, I'm getting in your business, you're a sulker. You're a sulker. Means when someone close to you hurts you, you start to sulk until they figure out what they did to you and try to rectify it. It's like you turn your whole house into one of those escape room games, right? That we all got to play along. Everybody else has to figure out what they did to you with no help from you. Anybody married to one of those? Don't raise your hand. Do not raise your hand. Then there's the stuffer. The stuffer. This is the person who just constantly stuffs anger and conflict down in their heart. You ask them, is everything okay? And they answer, yeah, I'm fine. Everything's fine. We're all fine. Everybody can see the little text bubble above your head, right, with curse words in it. We're fine. Others of you are the litigator. The litigator means you're a good arguer. You can usually prove in whatever situation that you're not in the wrong. It's not that you can't admit you're wrong, just that in your mind you are legitimately never wrong. Right? So listen, you're a real blessing to live with, okay? I love you, Michelle. Right? By the way, have you fellow litigators figured out that when you win an argument at home, you really don't win anything? Right? You don't win anything. Right? In other places, if you win an argument, guess what? You win. There's a reward. Not at home. You win in a courtroom. You win at your office. Right? You get some benefit. You call the customer service line. You give them down the road acting like a Presbyterian or something, okay? Right? And you get what you want. But if you win an argument at home, you don't win. Conflict is emotional. It's complicated. And often winning arguments doesn't win in the relationship. Finally, there's the screamer. The screamer, right? The person, when something goes wrong, they get it out at full volume. You notice people who come from screamer families, right? And when they marry people who didn't come from a screamer family, right? Everybody just talks loud all the time. We're not mad. We're working it out. And you came from a peacemaker family. You're like, what is happening, right? So you have your first fight. The one's a screamer, can't figure out why the one who isn't a screamer, they won't engage. And the non-screamer's looking at the screamer thinking, demon, come out. What is happening right now? So today, and I probably captured 99% of you in that breakdown. But today we're going to use Jesus' half-brother, James, to teach us one really important concept about conflict, and one that when you get it, I believe it can fundamentally change how you engage in conflict. So how do we have and approach Christ-like conflict or confrontations? And a game-changing principle we're going to find in James chapter 4. James chapter 4. I mean, really, who's going to know more about family conflict and strife than Jesus, his own brother? I mean, can you imagine growing up in a home with the Son of God as your older brother? Out of bed in the morning, he got fresh breath, right? He's got a smile on his face. Right? His bed's made perfectly. He always does his homework. He eats his vegetables with joy. He doesn't complain. You're pretty sure he's doing something to the water over there. He makes his water taste better than yours. You can't prove it. Right, how many times did James hear, I wish you were more like your brother? So James knows what he's talking about. Things like jealousy. Right? So here's the principle today. Intense conflict usually involves idolatry in both parties. Conflict usually involves idolatry in both parties. When you have conflict with someone, I'm not saying both parties are equally in the wrong, just that when a conflict gets heated to the point that it leads to relational fracture, it's a problem. And in those cases, it does involve idolatry. Every time. If you want to deal with it, you start there. So let me show you what I mean in James chapter 4, and we'll start with verse 1. It says, "What causes fights and quarrels among you?" Fair question. It's a fair question, James. You know, if I were to ask you what was causing conflict and strife in your life right now, most of you would probably point to someone near you and say, "Easy." You'd be pointing at a parent or spouse or a child. You'd be thinking maybe about a friend or a boss. But James here says, think deeper. Think deeper with this. We continue in verse 1. He says, "But don't they come from your desires that battle within you? You desire but do not have, so you kill. You covet, but you cannot get what you want, so you quarrel and fight. You do not have because you do not ask God." And by the way, James is writing to church people here. So kill here is metaphorical. It's using hyperbole. Think of it as rage or willingness to destroy a relationship. And what causes that? What causes that? What does James say? Your desires. Your desires. There's something that you want that the person is keeping from you, that you think you are entitled to. And so you despise them for it. You begrudge them for it, for your desires. Right? That comes from you. For example, you're sitting at the table, your husband's late coming home, right? And he's supposed to kind of tag you're it. All right, you're supposed to switch places with you, so with the kids, so you can go out and get some errands run. And so you're fuming. You're mad. Why am I mad? Because, right, your husband is keeping you from what you wanted to do this afternoon. You aren't saying he's not doing something wrong. Right? He was working. Maybe he had to come home a little late. But you need to acknowledge that the anger, the rage is coming from the fact that he is depriving you of something that you wanted to do. And he got in the way of that. So he's depriving you of something that you feel like you're entitled to. More than once did I come home and Shannon had been home all day with a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old. I come in. It's like she's had her pocketbook on her purse the whole day waiting on me to get home. Right? And I come in the door and she's like this. Right? With Preston. Here. Okay. All right. Just please come home. Just please come home. But that's real. That's real. Right? You say, man, he just doesn't understand. He just doesn't appreciate the work that I do for this family every day. He comes from thinking about his needs and only his needs. And he's totally oblivious to mine. And it makes me furious. Right? Or maybe my spouse is the most sexually selfish person on the planet. He or she's just not thinking about what I need or what I want or what I deserve. So what creates this intensity? In those situations, in the real world situations, is that you're not getting what you want. It's that simple. Right? That scholars, biblical scholars, say, right, that if you look in verse 2, verse 1, the back half of that, don't they come from your desires that battle within you? Right? They say that is an Old Testament allusion to idolatry. An idol is something that takes the place of God in your life. Okay? That's the definition. If you grew up in church, like that's the definition that you learned. All right? Most of us think that ain't me. I'm not an idolater. I'm not that at all. We think idolatry means bowing down to little gold statues. You don't have any of those. Right? Artemis, the goddess of prosperity and money. Nike. Don't look at me that way. Right? Nike was the goddess of prosperity and money, and right, it was worshipped by athletes, the goddess of victory. Actually, Nike, the goddess of victory, right, worshipped by athletes and warriors. Aphrodite, the goddess of sexuality, of beauty. Right, they would literally worship Aphrodite by having sex with prostitutes right there at the temple. Right there. So, we kind of do. We kind of do have idols. Right, the idol of prosperity, right, the idol of victory, of always having to win, right, the idol of sexuality and beauty, right, we always got to have and meet all our selfish desires. Man, we got to be insta-ready. And I'm not right. I mean, I don't understand with some of this, but we got to understand that we are all idolaters. We're all. Right? An idol is anything that takes up the place of God in your life. Something that controls you. And many of you don't even know it. Something that you depend on for life. Things that you depend on for happiness. Something that without it you feel like life not even worth living. And James says when conflict gets heated in your heart, because, right, you have determined something is so important in your life that you can't function without it. And heaven behold that my husband or my wife or my children get in the way. James says that next, right? In 2b, you do not have because you don't ask God. Well, that's weird. That's not where I thought that said. I didn't think it would be in this context. Right? But understand this. Where should you first take your needs? To God. Take them to God. Right? God may use marriage to fulfill some of your needs. Right? Listen. Right? God may use marriage to fulfill some of your needs. But He is still the one in charge of meeting them. You understand that? God is the one who will meet your needs. Now, He may use marriage as a tool to do that. If I'm a true servant of God and I have a need that is not being met, the first place that I need to turn is to Him. It's to Him. Not my spouse, not my children. I trust Him, not Shannon, as the one who meets my needs. James takes this even a step further. Right? He says in James 4:3, but some, when you ask, you do not receive because you ask with wrong motives, that you may spend what you get on your pleasures. You adulterous people. Man, James, that escalated quickly. I mean, some of you know how to pray, but even when you pray like an idolater. Then he compares us to adulterers. What? James, you need to mind your business, bro. You don't know me. Yeah, he compares us then to adulterers. Idolatry and adultery have a lot in common. What happens in adultery? What happens in adultery? One spouse finds certain delights in someone else that he should be finding in his spouse. That's a picture, right? Isn't that a picture of our relationship with Christ and being an idolater, right? That we put God, so anything in front of God, right? That's what we do in adultery. We put somebody else, right, in front of our spouse. Spiritual adultery is finding happiness and security in things that you ought to find in God. So how do you pray like an adulterer? Right, think of a man saying this to his wife. You're supposed to find those things in me. You pray like an adulterer when the joy and the peace of your heart's dependent on God giving you some answer. God, I can't be happy unless He talks about me this way. God, I can't be happy unless we make this amount of money. God, I can't feel good about myself unless my kids turn out a certain way. God, I can't be happy unless I have this level of freedom. God will say, you spiritual adulterer. You spiritual adulterer. Why aren't I enough for you? Why can't you find answers to those questions in me? God, hey, I'm the chief among the sinners. God, please bless this church. Please make it grow. I can't be happy unless the church looks like this. I'm guilty. Right? It's the same. I'm guilty of that. One day God said to me, why aren't I enough? Why aren't I enough for you, you spiritual adulterer? Why can't you seek me and let me handle the church? I died for the church. You didn't. Why won't you let me handle this? Right, the point is that what takes conflicts, right, what takes those to a heated perspective, a heated relationship-killing level, is that this person is keeping you from getting what you want, what you think you are entitled to, what controls your emotions and is essential to you for a happy, fulfilled life. The first way to de-escalate any conflict, church, listen to this, is to acknowledge that. Acknowledge who you are. That you are an idolater. That you are a spiritual adulterer. Right? If you want to de-escalate any situation, right, acknowledge that. Turn back to Christ. You say, God, ultimately, I trust you. God, I trust you to meet my needs. Not them, not my wife. I trust you. This person or these people may be a vehicle for you to do that, God, right? But ultimately, I trust you. You should wake up every morning and say that. And then, you may still confront the person for their wrong, but it won't be from this desperate, raging, you have attacked me at my core place. Isaiah 26:3 says, you will keep in perfect peace those whose minds are steadfast because they trust in you. When your mind is fixed upon God, trusting Him to meet your needs, you will have perfect peace. even in conflicts. Even in conflicts, you're going to have that. Philippians 4:6. Do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation, by prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, present your requests to God. You see what's happening? I'm looking to God to first meet my needs. I'm not dependent on Shannon for my personal needs. I'm dependent on God. That gives me peace, right? That passes all understanding, right? If I will just seek Him. Listen, Jesus had plenty of interpersonal conflicts with people. If you read the Gospels, you'll see He gets in a surprising number of arguments. Jesus is doing two primary things in the Gospels: eating and arguing. He does a lot of eating and a lot of arguing. I've never been more like Jesus in my life. I love that. But His conflicts were always loving conflicts. Loving conflicts. Right? Conflicts that confronted the wrong without escalating the confrontation to relationship killing. So, what does Christ-like confrontation look like? Number one, Christ-like confrontation overlooks a lot. It overlooks a lot. Galatians 6:1, brothers and sisters, Proverbs 19:11, a person's wisdom yields patience. It is to one's glory to overlook an offense. Proverbs 12:16, fools show their annoyance at once, but the prudent overlooks an insult. A fool is short-fused. They have to comment on everything. You ever been around somebody like this? They can't let anything go. The wise, by contrast, let it go. Da-da-da, da-da-da. In marriage, I always kind of think of this like tennis. Imagine you and your spouse, you're staying apart from each other over the net, hitting love balls back and forth to each other. Okay? You see it? Picturing it? Okay? But one of you gets a little upset, so you put a little spice on it. And your spouse says, oh, okay, is this what we're doing? We doing this? All right. He turns it with even a little more spice, and back and forth. Eventually, you're at the net pounding balls at each other. Right? That's how this happens. Back and forth, right? A better strategy is the first partner to just let it go and reserve. Proverbs says that's what the wise man does. Right? Well, this does not apply to things that do lasting damage to your relationships. We'll talk about that in a second, okay? Right? But when you do something, right, a lot of times, right, the loving thing is to confront them. And it may be easier to keep the peace, but out of love for them, you have to speak up. Right? So I'm not talking about that, right? But listen, in the words of the immortal theologian Kenny Rogers, the secret to surviving, son, is knowing what to throw away and know what to keep. You got to know when to hold them. You got to know when to fold them. You got to know when to walk away. And you got to know when to run sometimes. That's all I've got to say about that. Number two, Christ-like confrontation is gentle. It's gentle. Galatians 6:1, brothers and sisters, if someone is caught in sin, you who live by the Spirit should restore that same person gently. But watch yourselves, or you may also be tempted. What does gently mean? Lovingly? Respectfully? Not selfishly? Here's a litmus test for us. Okay? How do we know that? How do we know? Ask yourself this question. Are you excited to confront them about it? If so, stop. You're in sin. It's not gentle. Right? If you're excited, it's not gentle. Right? Here's a few practical tips. All right, in confrontation, use I rather than you. Use I rather than you. For example, right? Rather, instead of saying you hurt me, say I was hurt. Instead of you're never at home, say I want to spend more time with you. It's practical ways. Feel like Dr. Phil up here. Avoid superlatives. Always, never. Don't say you always do that. Don't say you never do this. Attack the problem, not the person. Gentle confrontation is done with respect. For every one statement that you make about what's wrong, make 5 describing what's right. And this is where it gets me. Avoid sarcasm at all times. Listen, I can't argue with Shannon because I will be the biggest smart aleck in the world. It never ends well. All right, resolve one problem at a time. Don't write down the second issue, all right? But let's try to resolve one problem at a time. Avoid piling on. That's what happens. All right, here's one more. You're going to say, really? Avoid confronting your spouse publicly. Avoid confronting your spouse publicly. That person should be the most loved person in your life, the most respected person in your life. Keep it behind doors. All right? Football team. We want to keep our business in the locker room. All right? We need to mind our business. It's the same thing at home. All right? Don't put her down. Right? You can disagree in public, right? Like Duke is the best basketball program because they have 5 national championships. Then the other spouse can say, no, UNC is because they have 6. It all works, right? You can disagree. Don't do it publicly. Number 3, Christ-like confrontation listens as much as it talks. James 1:19, my dear brothers and sisters, take note of this. Everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry. Proverbs 18:13, to answer before listening, that is folly and shame. This is exactly what some of you do, especially you dudes. It's what we do. Right? The majority of communication problems aren't expression problems, they're listening problems. James says, be quick to listen, but he doesn't say listen in a hurry. Be quick to listen, but don't listen in a hurry. Right? What the person most wants is for you to see them and to hear them. Shannon will tell me. She'll tell me. She's like, I don't need you to fix something. I don't need you to fix this. Right? I just need to tell you. I just need to share with you this. Right? And listen, men, don't give premature advice. I do this. Right? Because you will misread the situation. I promise. Oftentimes, what the person is looking for is a companion in their pain, not a solution. So don't interrupt her. Right? And try to explain her pain away with some Aristotelian logic or something. Right? A equals B. So B equals C. So that means A equals C. Therefore, it's really illogical that you feel hurt. I know some of you are wired that way. Right? I'm wired a lot like that. Right? I when you do that, I can promise you she won't go, huh? Thank you. You know, I'm so stupid sometimes. I could have sworn I was offended and hurt, but now I see things much clearer now by the force of your logic. I'm not really hurt after all. I'm so thankful you're my husband. Said no woman ever. Number 4, Christ-like confrontation owns its part of the problem. When you become aware of any way you were wrong, even how your idolatries contributed to the problem, apologize without qualifications. Just like a well doesn't have a but, neither does an apology. Well, but. I'm sorry, but apologies don't have buts. Okay? Because if you say, I apologize, but you're not apologizing. They don't move from I'm sorry to but. They go from I'm sorry to how can I make it better? Right? And don't say, well, you're the one that made me do this. The other person is guilty of their sin and will answer to God for it. Right? When your emotions are engaged, you will always see yourself 100% in the right. You ever had a friend that you're sharing something with about maybe something that happened at home, right? And they look at you and say, that's ridiculous. You're an idiot. Let that go. Yeah. You need a friend like that. Number 5, Christ-like confrontation has a 3A practice. Admit, apologize, and ask forgiveness. Right? Admit. The key here is to be specific. What exactly are you sorry for? Not just sorry. Right? If you can't be specific, you don't understand what you did enough to change. Apologize. Apologize. Once again, be specific. And then this is the hardest one. Ask forgiveness. Puts you in a posture of humility every time you do that. Number 6, Christ-like confrontation is quick to forgive. Right? In conflict, you demonstrate what you believe about the gospel. You know, what's that? The core of Christianity is being overwhelmed by the forgiveness of the gospel. Right? That God forgave you for everything that we are, right? That listen, when Jesus was dying on the cross, right, that he had to turn his back because of all the sin of the world, right, that came on him. Right? Realizing that you've sinned against God way more than you ever sinned against someone else. And the forgiveness God has given you is so overwhelming, right, that you gladly, that you easily forgive others. Right? So when you forgive, right, when you fail to forgive your spouse, right, or his or her sins, you're saying that their sin against you is worse than your sin against God. Really? We got to see ourselves. This is all a gospel picture. Right? Don't try to separate it. It's all same. Everything works in the gospel, right? So it's not like we have a shelf up here, okay? We got shelves, all right? And for you A-type personality people, that you got everything in containers and they're labeled. Stupid labels, right? That's how you got it, right? And we look at this shelf and we look at all of our containers of our stuff of work and family and church and everything else that goes in this, right? And we try to move those containers. All right, this one's important. Let me put it up top. Right? Okay, church. Yeah, okay, that probably should go on top. Okay, right, Jesus and the gospel, yep, up top. That's what we try to do, but what we don't understand is this whole shelf is the gospel. The whole thing is the gospel, right? We have to shift and move our job, our work, our family, our spouse, our church, everything within the parameters of the gospel. Everything works like that. Number 7, Christ-like confrontation is wise and patient in the timing of the confrontation. Proverbs 12:18, the words of the reckless pierce like swords, but the tongue of the wise brings healing. Reckless means words that are spoken in anger. But it can also has a second meaning, that it can mean words not given at the right time. I used to have to get onto my son all the time. Right? He would go and he's a lot more like me than he is his mother. And right, so what I've done in my 30 years of experience, my relationship with this beautiful lady, I know when to poke the bear, and I know, Matt Webb, Matt's not even here, all right? Men's retreat, sorry. Right, and I know when to leave her alone. I know when to ask for certain things, and I know when not to. Preston doesn't have that filter. We're trying to teach him that. Right? he'll go and I can remember him being younger and a teenager. He'd go and ask his mom. I'm like, dude, no, right? No, not the right time. No, I don't care. No, it's not the right time. I really need to go. Okay, bro. Like, I can't help you if you keep talking. All right? And sure enough, he'd go, bam. Told you, dude. I told you. Right? You got to know. You got to read the room sometimes, right? Sometimes it's like practice a 24-hour rule. Right? Practice the 25. Man, keep your word, though, if you do this, guys, right? Or you're going to lose credibility. You say, well, what about the verse, don't let the sun go down on your wrath? Right? Doesn't that mean that you have to deal with your anger before you go to bed? Right? It can't. It can't literally mean when the sun goes down, right? Because what are the people in Sweden going to do when the sun don't go down for like 2 or 3 months? Right? And by the way, wait till you get face to face. Don't text. Don't email. Right? Harvard study. I won't quote Harvard many times from this pulpit, I promise, okay? Right? But it says within an emotional conversation, 7% of what you believe about communication is relayed through content. 38% is through facial expression. 55% through body language. Don't send a text. Finally, Christ-like confrontation shines with gospel hope. It shines with gospel hope. Conflicts spiral because there's an overtone of despair that pervades and permeates those conflicts. Right? That relationship's never going to work. You're too broken. I'm too broken. Right? It's not. Through the cross, I know He can cleanse every sin. Through the power of the resurrection, I know, right, that He can cleanse my sin. I know that's where my hope is. I know that God appointed Shannon and I to be together. I know He appointed that covenant. So therefore, I know that He will supply the grace and the mercy we need for anything that He assigns to us. Right? I believe God, all those years before, knew that there was going to be a Shannon Bridges born in Sandy Mush, North Carolina. I believe before He knew that there was a Christopher Shuford that was going to be born in North Dakota. And in His infinite time and in His infinite wisdom, He knew, right, that they would come together and form a covenant, a promise before God. Again, it happened right here. So therefore, if God can do that, if He can bring this sinner and this sinner together, right, for a gospel relationship, why don't I think that He is not going to work in us and through us and through the gospel to meet every need that we will have? Again, it goes back to the gospel. We believe that Jesus was raised from the dead. We believe, right, that they killed Him. They put Him in front of a 2-ton boulder in a grave. And we believe 3 days later, He came back to life. And we believe for 40 days later that He ascended to heaven. And we believe that one day He is coming back for us. But we don't believe He can handle our marriage. What are we doing? What are we doing? Right? That He made your children perfect. Perfect. He made them in the image of Him, is what Scripture says. But He can't manage that relationship that you have, that you can't trust. Listen, mamas. But you can't trust that child and put them into God's hands to prepare them, or to prepare you to work in them? We do not have a relationship problem. We in America do not have a marriage problem. Listen to me, we do not have a divorce problem in the United States. We have a gospel problem. That we don't trust the gospel enough in our relationships, in our conflicts, in our confrontations. We don't live out the gospel in and through those relationships. Because I promise you that if we did, everything. Be a game changer. Right? Forget about Hamas and the peace treaty in Israel, right? We need the peace of God in our hearts and in our relationships, right? And that never be a conflict or a problem at all. If we can do that. I challenge you, couples. It is outside of your relationship with Christ, it is the most important thing and commitment and covenant that you will make before God outside of your salvation, is that relationship that you have and you bond together in the holy matrimony of marriage. It's the most important thing, right? So why do we not pick up the gospel and try to live that gospel out with the person that we love more than anything? Right? And those children that God gave you, that you will give your life for, that you would. Right? Listen, I've never thought I could love something so much and want to kill it so bad sometimes. Right? But He gives me a picture of a heavenly Father. Right? So this I'm trying not to say Jack, but this messed up guy, right here, right, can look to his heavenly Father to know what kind of earthly father that I'm supposed to be, that I can portray and I can filter the gospel of Jesus through my life and my heart and my words and my voice to my children. Because, why does that matter? Why does that matter? Because about 6 weeks ago, all right, that one got engaged. Okay? So why does that matter? Why does that matter? What does she know about marriage? How is she going to know how to live out a godly marriage? How is she going to know? She's never been married before. She doesn't know. It's only through what she's seen from me and her mama that she sows and she sees it. That's why it's important. That's why it's everything. Right? I'm looking out here. I'm seeing several couples that are getting ready to get married within the next year or two. It's the most important thing you're going to do. Outside of giving your life to Christ. Right? Okay, I think I've said it all. And more. Come on, let's stand. I'm passionate. I am so passionate about this. It's the hardest thing I've ever done. The hardest thing I've ever done is being married and waking up, right, to somebody who's not made like me, who's not built like me, who was raised different from me, was raised in a house of girls, me raised in a couple in a house of boys, right? It's hard. It's so hard. But the gospel can penetrate all of that. Let's pray. God.